Hello, folks, and welcome to today's episode of the Hospitable Host podcast. Today, we are speaking with Erika from Manage This Home, based out of New York State. Erika has just recently hit the fantastic target of $500,000 in direct booking revenue. She's here today to talk about her experience with Hospitable Direct and her experience on the new Mogul plan. Let's get into it. Hello, Erika. Great
Hi,
to meet you. Great to have you on. How are you doing
pleasure,
today?
Miles. Doing great. Doing great. Thanks so much for
Awesome.
having me here.
No problem at all. Thank you for being here. Erika, maybe you can give yourself a little introduction and tell us about yourself, your business, how you got started in short-term rentals in the first place.
Yes, absolutely. My name is Erica. I am located in New York City, but we operate our rentals in upstate New York, in the specifically the area of Catskills,
Mhm.
Ulster County, mostly in Ulster County, which is closer to Kingston and Woodstock. Very desirable areas where
Nice.
people from New York have second homes. I have a second home as well. And the way we started, well, that's interesting because I started with short-term rentals about uh, 15 years ago, right around when Airbnb was also starting. And funny enough, we were um, Airbnb like third client,
Wow.
something like that.
Yeah.
It was very very early on, and back then we had a different model, but still short term rental. We leased a building in Midtown Manhattan.
Okay.
Close to Bryant Park, and we renovated those apartments and we will rent them out. And back then, Airbnb was really, really new. Nobody knew Airbnb. There was no Hospitable to help us renting through through Airbnb. So if you wanted to, so back then the big thing used to be Booking.com, and if you wanted to work with one or more channels, you were out of luck because you had to you had
Yeah.
to, wow, you almost didn't want to work with Airbnb because the cost of overbooking is so expensive, and you didn't have 13 years ago, you didn't have property management to facilitate your life,
Yeah.
so it was really expensive to make those mistakes, which it doesn't happen now,
Hmm.
luckily. But I it's important to have a good software, insurances and things like that, that back then was never a thing. Our industry evolved quite a bit in this past 13 years. And my business also did, because we were operating that business that I mentioned to you for about 9 years when the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
And being in New York, Midtown Manhattan, we shut down. We shut down for 2 years, and I had to dissolve that business
Mm.
altogether, which was incredibly challenging because back then with Booking.com, we used to take deposits. We had deposits for people that had booked their reservation 6 months ahead. What are we going to
Yeah.
do? How are we going to? It was very, very challenging. Anyway, from that, we took 2 years to solve that. We worked together with Booking.com. And then I moved upstate New York because my husband and I, we have a weekend place there. And my neighbors started talking to me. It's like, hey, Erica, well, I went to hospitality school. I went to Cornell. And they were like, Erica, you should just help us rent our house at Airbnb. Airbnb now is super popular, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But we were talking about the pandemic, 4 years ago. Everybody wants to Airbnb, but at around that time, we didn't know the geopolitical timing, around, especially New York, was like, are people going to travel? are
Mhm.
people going to open their house? Is it safe to host people from
Yeah.
other place? How deep is the deep cleaning that you provide? You know, those kind of things. You
Mhm.
know? Anyway, interesting times. But this is when I opened Manager's Home, and we've been operating for about, this is the start of our fourth year. Originally, when I opened, I wanted to have 20 properties. That's what I want. That
Okay.
was my goal. I want to have a life, you know. I'm in my 40s. I just had I have a 2 year old. I want to have 20 properties and I want to enjoy life. Well, I'm at 20 properties and now I want to have 30 properties. You know, and it's just it's interesting. It became possible because we have the tools,
Mhm.
right? Because, and you and I, we were briefly talking about direct bookings,
Of
right?
course. Yeah.
And you gave me the great news that we achieved $500,000 in direct sales, which is
Fantastic. A lot of pause and
amazing.
applause there.
Amazing,
Brilliant.
amazing news. Today about 35 to 40% of our bookings is direct. And we can only achieve that because we have the tools provided by you guys to do direct bookings safely. Because to
Mhm.
do direct bookings, you can always do direct bookings, but when you're managing other people's house, you have to do it
Yeah.
safely. And there's a big difference with that because you still need to have insurances, verify that person is who they say they are, that there is no sex trafficking, there's so many things that can happen, right? And I'm managing high-end properties. I have properties that I invest, that I own, and I also have other properties. But when you're in this universe, the umbrella and the care that you have to take is just so important. And you guys do a great job with supporting us, as hosts to offer direct booking in a secure way. That's very important. And I think that the reason why we became and we encourage people to book directly through our actions, like everyone that so I would like to share, if it's okay, like a couple of tips that we do.
For sure,
uh,
yeah. I'm sure like our listeners want to know how do they drive more direct bookings, right? I think, when we came on, you said, you thought 30 to 35% is kind of like standard for direct. And I said, well, I'm sure there's plenty of people listening that aspire to get to that level, right? And are probably too reliant right now on one channel, be that Airbnb or booking. So yeah, how do they get to that 30-35% on their own with direct?
Yeah, so it's all about communication, I think. So we communicate, we have a fairly standard messages that we send throughout their stay. We create a relationship with the clients while they're staying. We're not intrusive or invasive, but we are there. So we are constantly rated really well for communication. But there's always like, hey, at the end of their stay, hey, we'd like to offer you and your family and your friends a 10-15% discount for your returning. In order to claim this, reach us on our website. We share our
Mhm.
website, but at that point we already have their email. We ask them if they want to opt out into direct communications. We have every month we send about one or two newsletter out featuring the way that we've been structuring this email is we pick a property that we manage and we create an itinerary saying, so this is how you can enjoy this property if you were to book a 3 weekend stay there.
Nice.
And we highlight all the amenities of the property, but also places in the around in the area. And it's interesting because we established this trust relationship with the client where they know they have the clients will have different needs, right? And we have different properties in our portfolio. We
Mhm.
have mansions, we have cottages, we have everything in between. But what we have is we have incredible customer service throughout, and that comes because I'm from the hospitality industry, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But my clients, they keep coming back to us because of the trust. So they come back, and it's interesting because even we also had clients that like to stay with us so much to say, hey, Erica, I'm thinking about buying a property here. Would you manage my property? So this kind of
Mhm.
conversations also happen, just because they had a good stay in a place where you manage. So yeah, the direct goes beyond, right?
No,
So
that's amazing, and I think we do hear that from quite a few hosts. Where, I mean, you mentioned it earlier of like the neighbor seeing you doing a great job and wanting to help you manage, and then also, yeah, guests, they say, going into it themselves and looking for help from someone that's clearly doing an amazing job like you, and just wanting that assistance. That's fantastic to hear. Um,
yeah.
I mean, so to kind of turn this slightly on its head, a lot of positives so far from you in terms of kind of the great experience and growing. I mean, obviously the COVID there was, the big negative, but outside of that, kind of what are some of the challenges that you find with hosting, that like the less rosy side of things, and I guess how you handle those.
Okay, well, there are
It can be a therapy
those.
session if you need it to be. It can be.
There are those. It's just well, just last weekend we were host. I'm not gonna get into a lot of details because I don't wanna. But like just last weekend, we were hosting somebody that rented a 6-bedroom property that we managed, really large, 5,000 square foot. And in the reservation, there was about 3 people, a couple and a child. And he decided to message us on and on and on and on about one of the bedrooms, the AC was not working. I was very puzzled because there is 4 extra bedrooms in the house. And it's like, no, no, this is unacceptable. I understand it's unacceptable. But the level of rage was a bit. I was like, okay, there's still 4 other bedrooms for you to.
Yeah.
Anyway, so long story short, we try to find somebody to fix the HVAC the next day. It's always a holiday, and we try to communicate, and we are being really nice. The guest checks
Yeah.
out. Guest request 50% of their payment back because it was so unacceptable. And 50% was like $4,000 for that
Wow.
weekend. Okay.
Mm.
And I was like, okay, this is so strange. There's something that doesn't connect here. I check the cameras. I try not to look for cameras, unless there is a reason for it. This was a reason for it. Well, he had a full house. He had so many guests, and a dog and everything, and it became the fact that we then needed to go back to read what the Airbnb policies of the week was, because they change every
Mm.
week. To file, something, and have that
Yeah.
conversation and make sure that that doesn't become a bad review, and even try to bring that into a good. I did things like that happen. Sometimes
Of
we
course.
we get people that are not straightforward, do not respect your place, and you need to call them out. as well.
100%, definitely. And I
So
mean, and I know you mentioned that not wanting to use the cameras, but clearly the cameras coming in handy there to kind of like backup as proof as well, right? So it's something that is
yeah,
kind of a necessary evil to some degree, I guess.
necessary evil for sure. And but yeah, so in the end, everything worked out great. We obviously he retrieved the request for 50% of refund. There was no bad reviews involved by us or by Dan. And in the end, everybody's happy. But you need to sometimes, this kind of things happen as well, and it just, you have to deal with it.
Yeah, yeah, excellent. So, want to kind of swing it back to Hospitable a bit, if you don't mind. And so, you've already talked about direct booking and some of the messaging there. I guess we'd love to kind of understand from you what are some of the, or what's the one top feature that you kind of couldn't live without in Hospitable that kind of makes you stick around with Hospitable and stops you from maybe switching to another provider, perhaps.
um Well, direct booking is definitely one of them. I think that things have improved quite a bit now as well. I am a legacy
Mm,
client, and I moved to Mogul just recently, and I'm going through the pain of setting everything up on my end.
yeah,
But I think that Hospitable evolved incredibly this past 2 3 years. And the timing works. That it's clear that there is this relationship of trust where I see so much improvement this past 2 years that I trust that you guys are gonna keep doing everything at the speed. That there's still
yeah,
things that could be better, but I trust that is going to get there. And I think that that is something that watching you guys uh, invest so much in the product is something that uh, keeps me around.
nice, excellent.
I don't feel like I need to. And trust me, I get these calls. We all get those calls.
But
But yeah.
uh, yeah, and then I think that's great. I think the like the pain that you mentioned there is probably the Mogul plan has so many additional features, right? And I assume that the pain is setting up your owner statements now and accounting, and because now you're doing so much more stuff in Hospitable, hopefully, because we've added so many more features. Yeah, I guess there's a learning curve to adopting all
Yeah.
those features to some degree, right?
Yeah, but there's also another thing. For an example, I was having a conversation with my bookkeeper,
Mm,
and I was explaining to her what is my growth plan for the next year and a half.
yeah,
And then I turned to her and I said, "Hey, Kate, uh, if I were to onboard 10 properties in the next year, are you going to be completely overwhelmed with the way you're handling things?" It's just like, I absolutely will. And that was the trigger that I needed to get to switch to Mogo and start implementing these changes now, so the foundation is strong for us to build from there. That's all we're doing now. Building from 20 to 30, 40 properties requires completely different tools.
yeah.
That, and the Mogo, this is where it makes total sense to grow, at least for me. So that's very important support as well.
Excellent. Yeah, and I think that's something that we can kind of say probably across the board, right? So even if you're starting at like, you've only got one property now and you're thinking like, oh, I don't need any software kind of thing. But if you're thinking about growing, it's like you've got to start thinking about, well, where do I want to be in a year or two time? Like get the process and the software and everything in place now to be ready to grow, because once you grow, there's no time, right? Once you've got the properties and you've got the guests coming in,
Yeah.
and you've got all this money coming in and you've got to do the accounting, it's too late. You're going to be struggling to keep your head above the water, right? So get those processes in place sooner rather than later.
Yeah, 100%. We're still learning how to process all that, and being able to. Another thing, we're using more the connectivities, the apps that you guys offer as well. We just started working with Hostco to charge more early check-ins and late checkouts, which is something that I was giving away, and it was really bothering me. I was like, this is so much revenue that I'm giving. So that's in place as well. It was really easy to connect, because you guys are partner. So that was great. So I'm diving into more help as well. This is another thing that I've been doing. It's been working well.
Awesome. That's great to hear. And then, I want to wrap up shortly. I'm conscious of not taking up too much of your time, Erika, but you've already given us lots of fantastic tips. I'd wonder, if you were giving any advice to, so obviously you're a property manager, you're managing for other people. If you were giving some advice to an owner looking for a manager in their area, what do you think owners should be looking for in a great property manager? What is the ideal property manager in your eyes, obviously from your perspective as a property manager yourself?
Yes, I think that they should really have somebody that think through the setup process, all the troubleshooting, um, ahead of time before going live, putting the time in, and taking a couple of months to set up stock, learn the house, write down that incredible guest book with answers for guests that want to do things on their own, or training videos for us to be able to give our VAs, whatever they are in the world, to reply. Just the training. Take time doing that. I think that's really important. And we take our time doing that. We also take a lot of time with design. I guess I am talking about design, experience design overall, but interior design. We have interior design on board, and what we are seeing is properties that use interior designs operates at such a higher level in terms of ROI. So we have a designer as well. So that's something that we do. So the investment, don't expect Airbnb or short-term rental to be quick, to be easy. This is a industry that has been taken by professionals, and there's so much competition. Just in my area alone, 3 or 4 bedrooms, there's over 2,000 listings. Just the last 365 days. And so anyway, it's an industry that has been overtaken by professionals. So you don't try to do it yourself. I think that is you're gonna, it pays off to work with a professional that is going to bring you a team and set you up for success.
Nice, awesome. And so, if people did want to get in contact with you and find out more about your business and potentially, work with you, where can they go to find out more, Erika?
Yes, we have a website, managethishome.com. We're also on Instagram. It's very easy to get in touch with us. And I'll be happy to talk to anyone in the area, specific Ulster County, that wants to work with us. Or our hosts, I'm very connected with hosts as well about legislations and things like that. I'm open and happy to connect.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Cool.
Well,
thank you so much.
Great speaking with you. Thank you, Erika.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening today, folks. If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform.